Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
G'day, Mayor Bar. My name's Adam, and today, limits to growth.
Limits to growth.
So the 30-year update. So this book was written
1972.
Yeah, the first one. So they made all these predictions about the environment and the way our economy works and relates to our environment, and obviously the limits to the growth of the economy and what we're in for. And then there was an update about 10 years ago.
Yep. So it was they wrote the first one using this computer model that took into account everything that's going on in the world, and now they've done an update 2002. So after 30 more years of data, basically the world's we're in strife, aren't we? We are in strife.
So yeah, the book, it's not like a green person writing it who's got this sole motive, greenie for the environment. It's like all the pure objective science, data-driven stuff about how things are working and what is coming. And
correct.
And the difference under different scenarios, like what we're in for in the future.
Yeah. Well, at the end, there's 11 things here that everyone can do to save the planet in small ways. We'll stick that in at the end. So if you get bored, skip to the last minute or two. And listen to the 11 things and hear the song. We'll preface this that I just got back late last night from a flight from Europe. Jones has had a big night on the
No excuses, mate. We don't fucking throw our quality.
No, this is going to be... mate, what do you think of the book overall?
Dude, I loved it. So for me, top 5. And
top 5 books? Nice.
It's a little bit scary. Like we've covered some topics that, you'd almost rather be ignorant. And this, again, goes in that category.
Yeah.
But basically, the way the economy works now and growth and sustainability, and basically the environment can't really hold what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it as well. I really liked the start, really liked the end. I got a little bit bored in the middle, some of the specifics. We'll skip over some of the specific stuff, but just safe to say we're pretty fucked.
Yeah. So, we'll cover the 50,000 feet stuff, and then if the listeners...
I really like the theoretical stuff.
Yeah.
A lot. So
basically, we'll get into it. So our whole economy now is just based on just purely just growth. That's it. There's no externalities taken into this growth. The impact, the full social and environmental impacts aren't taken. So the whole economy is taken on growth. And there's obviously a lot of energy to extract materials from the earth. And when we first started doing this, it was real easy. It was like taking the low-picking fruit. Kind of thing. But now as we extract more and more, it actually takes more energy to find the materials and find this stuff, and say more energy to sort it out to get what we want. So there's more energy put into the discovery and production side, and as we keep putting more energy into that, there is less power in the actual economy, and that's one of the ways we get fucked. And it's kind of
we do.
It's kind of common sense, but we don't really realise it. Like using non-renewable resources is going to have a clash with exponential growth. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So
the inevitable. It is. That's it, man. Like if there's a fixed amount of these non-renewable resources and we just keep using it, at some point they run out.
And that's how our whole economy is based on. It's just growth, non-renewable resources. It's going to come to a clash. And a big part of the book is talks about how there is a delay in the feedback loop from the environment. So it's not like the environment tells us straight away, hey, come on, you're fucking me. Yeah. It takes a bit of time before the environment starts, letting the economy know it's, stop it.
That's a good little segue in that we've got, as you say, so there's a limit and there's what they keep talking about overshoot. So basically there's three things. So we've got this rapid growth and acceleration and change is one thing. The next ingredient is like there's a limit or a barrier where it's not safe to go beyond that. And thirdly, there's a delay or a mistake in either our perception of where we're at or the responses to those changes. So basically there's growth, physical growth, financial growth, psychological, organizational. There's all these things are growing, but there's limits of these. There's fixed limits of how much stuff there is, time. There might be even biological, political, psychological limits. And then there's delays in recognizing when we've gone past these limits. So maybe we're not paying attention to the right stuff. We've got faulty data. There's delays in the info. Our responses might be slow. There might be bureaucracy holding up the whole thing. And basically we can just, if we go beyond these limits, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Which is where we're headed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully not, but
hopefully.
So that's the question: is how much are we going to overshoot?
Yeah.
And then it's either from there we overshoot and then we oscillate to a sustainable approach, or if we overshoot too far, it's kind of like they use the reference of a bubble, like an economic bubble. If you go way too high, there will be an absolute collapse and everything just falls off.
Yeah.
Did you like the windshield metaphor?
Give it to me, mate.
So an example of this overshoot is, so say if you're driving your car, I'm driving my car and I've got my eyes blindfolded and Ashton's sitting next to me. So one option is, say if I didn't have the blindfold on and then I saw the red light coming, I'll just stop in time and that's fine. But if you put a blindfold on me and Ashton says, hey, mate, there's a red light coming, there's all of a sudden a little bit of a delay and I overshoot the red light a little bit. However, if Adam Ashton is telling me, lying and saying, no, there's no problem, no red light coming, just keep going, fuck yeah, go straight ahead, and then the ground's icy, it's going to take a lot longer with this ignorance for us to realise we've overshot the red light. And this is the analogy for what we're doing with the economy. We're going to just stop being ignorant, otherwise we're going to be fucking way too far ahead before we can actually do stuff about it.
I'm going to hit you with a few quotes from the book. Well, first of the book says, physical growth on a finite planet must eventually end. And another one from the U Thant. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. He was the Secretary General of the UN. And in one of the big reports to the United Nations, he said, human beings and the natural world are on a collision course. So it's he was definitely a big believer in these guys who wrote this book. And it's not good, is it?
Nah.
Things need to change, definitely.
Yeah.
What do you want to get into? Do you want to talk about some of the theory and stuff behind it?
Yeah, so
exponential growth.
What we're saying might seem a little bit airy and fairy, but the book is purely just a lot of scientific data and facts, and we're just like saying the outcomes of it.
Yeah.
So should we get into sources and sinks?
Let me have a quick look. What have I got here? Yeah, I'll just go real quickly. Exponential growth is something. A real brief overview of exponential growth. It's just like the growth depends on what's already there. So example they use is like simple interest versus compound interest. At the start, they're pretty much the same, but over a longer period of time, there's a massive difference between the outcomes. So simple interest might be you have $100 and every year you get $10 interest. So you get 100, 110, 120, 130, and so on. Whereas compound might be you get 10% of what's there. So the first year you get 10, you're up to 110, and then you get $11 interest, so to 121.
Yep.
So at the start, that $1 difference is nothing, but over the long term, it's a lot. So they're saying we're on this exponential growth pattern, and at the start, it seems like nothing, but the further and further you go along this exponential growth, it starts to get really obvious, and the difference is really massive. Mate, I don't know a whole lot about sources and sinks, so take over, mate.
So for me, this is very related to growth. So basically, there's sources. So you get your material from a source. Say you mine the ore out of the ground or whatever.
Yep.
You produce it. It has its life cycle, and then you dispose of it somewhere. So the two things that are limited are the sources and the sinks for the non-renewable resources. So obviously you can only take so much from the earth, and then there's also so much landfill space for toxic waste and all that. So for the case for, say, CO2 emissions, you burn coal, you take a certain amount, and then the sink would be the atmosphere. The atmosphere can only absorb so much. So exponential growth in the middle. So they're the two things that are going to stop us, either the source of the material or where we dispose of it. Mm-hmm. And those things are filling up. So that's where our issue is, basically. So if you can't recycle it or anything like that, then it just goes in the sink.
Yep, for sure. And so some of those sinks are like water, so like water pollution, air pollution. So there's some of the sinks you're referring to,
Yeah.
And then some of the sources are like non-renewable resources like fossil fuels, but then there's even some renewable things like food, land, soil that are sources that are limited.
So topsoil is a pretty scary one. There's data to say that topsoil is being lost 16 to 300 times faster than it can be replaced.
Yeah,
and with the Earth growing, or the world's population growing and everything, and there's only the source of agriculture. There's only so much of that as well.
Yeah. So some of these limited things, like as you're saying, even though we're trying to make more. We talked about it last episode, Cowspiracy.
Yeah.
They're knocking down forests to make more agricultural land, but it's not even the quantity as much as the quality. So you're saying the topsoil's it's disappearing, and that's where all the good shit is. That's where you grow your good food. So the yields from each each area of land are getting reduced.
Yeah.
And so they say that people aren't hungry because there's not enough food, but they're hungry because they can't afford to buy that food. And because our efficiency is going down, prices are going up, and that's where poverty is coming into it.
So yeah, another few sources is like the rate at which we're pumping groundwater. I think one of perhaps the biggest one that goes unrecognised a bit is like global oil production. Like our whole economy runs on oil. Oil is basically everything in the economy, and that's a finite resource.
Oh yeah.
So as soon as the discovery,
what happens when it runs out?
Well, before it runs out, when the discovery slows down, and we're increasing an exponential rate, when it just collides and oil becomes scarce, like scarcity, as we know, creates value. So when oil becomes scarce, the cost of fucking everything will just go through the roof because
everything's oil.
You can't do everything, and all our ships and the way everything moves around the world economy is all based on oil as well. So that could be one of the biggest problems we see.
Yeah,
equal to global warming and amongst all these other things as well.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? Some other things that they said is that 1 billion people still lack access to safe drinking water. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they say half of the world's population does not have basic sanitation facilities. So there's still plenty of issues that people around the world are facing. Maybe we're a bit sheltered in our nice first world economies, but around the world it's not pretty. Some other things they talked about, forests again clearing. A few real sad cases is they talked about Madagascar.
Yeah.
They called it a biotic treasure house. So the forest had 12,000 known species, 190,000 known animal species. And they said of those, 60% were found nowhere else on Earth. And 90% of the forest in Madagascar has been cleared for agriculture.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bad. And they also talk about Western Ecuador. And they said that almost all of the forests have been cleared and turned into banana plantations, oil wells, and human settlements.
Yeah.
So it's not good, man. They're just knocking down forests to try and keep providing for humans.
Yeah. So scary stuff. So we won't go specifically into the models they create, the computer models, but basically there's four situations and four outcomes. So should we get through it? Yeah,
let's get through those. So they've got this massive computer program that's got a whole bunch of stuff, whole bunch of inputs, and they tweak a few different things and give a whole bunch of different scenarios. But we won't go into the specifics. We'll just go more generally. I reckon page 158 is a real good. Yeah, there you go. So there's four things that can happen. Firstly, there's continuous growth. And continuous growth is like anyone who's done maths, like an exponential curve.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that the limits are also growing exponentially. So the limits are higher and they're far off where we're actually at, and the limits are growing. Even though our growth is continuous, the limits are growing as well. So we'll be fine.
And I think that's where the general population think we're at. So if you never question it, you think the limits are growing exponentially as well as our growth, and there's never going to be this collision.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the Andrew Bolts of the world and things like that, they think this is what's happening.
Yeah.
So if you're just blind to it, you never ask it.
Yeah.
We're sweet. Fucking keep growing, baby. Grow.
The second one is a sigmoid. And so basically they're saying limits are fixed. So limits are a flat line, and growth is sort of exponential, but then it starts to tail off, and it becomes almost asymptotic in that our growth will flatten out and will become in equilibrium with our flat limits.
Yeah. So in this, there's the feedback loop for the Earth is instant. So in my analogy I said earlier, this is the example where I don't have the blindfold on or see the red light coming, and I slowly take it to the stop, and then we don't miss the red light.
Yep, perfect. The third one is overshoot and oscillation. So we've got this limit, and we're growing exponentially, and then we're going to go over the limit, but we're going to realize, so then we can pull back. Once we go under, we can start to grow a little bit again, but as soon as we go over a bit, we're going to pull back. So that's okay, yeah?
Yeah, that's all right. That's the most desirable outcome.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of the final two. It's like what one happens.
Yeah. So that's okay. So limits are fixed. We're growing exponentially, but if we realize and we can save it and we can just oscillate, so that means when we go over, the limits aren't erodable. It means if we recover quickly from this, we're okay.
Yeah, and that's going to take a huge world effort and a huge transition, and everyone's going to have to change their goals, and it might take a bit of world pain for us to get to the point where, because a lot of the time, pain is necessary to like have the change that maybe the world needs to see. So maybe that in this scenario, this is what happens. Yeah,
and that's as I said, that'll be good. The fourth one is not good. So we've got this fixed limit, and it's called overshoot and collapse. And so that's the diagram they've got on the front cover. In that so limits are fixed. We're growing exponentially. We go over. Way over. We don't realise quick enough. The limits get eroded. Everything gets fucked up, and we just crash. World's fucked.
The world might be in a bit of trouble if that happens, and then so everything that we see right now, it's going to change. Our values will change if this is the case. So if you're not ignorant and you're happy to just see what's actually going to happen, it's going to be one of the last two.
Yeah.
How far are we going to overshoot before we realise, and then we fucking get our act together and figure shit out.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the things they talk about, things where it's one of the bad things is living off capital as opposed to living off income. So if you can, they use like some analogies, like if you've got a bank account and you've got your savings, you've got your income. If you spend a little bit more than your income, it's going to be okay for a while until that initial capital runs out. When you get to zero, you can't be living on more than you're earning. And they say the same as like if you've got a full bathtub, the water's going to drain out quicker than you can pour it back in. And that's okay until you run out of that initial water.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is that the difference between oscillation and collapse is if you realise quick enough and the limits aren't eroded or overstressed when you go over them, that's okay. But if it's something like oil, in that we're using way too much oil, and once we go over that limit, we can't save it. It's non-renewable. That's collapse. That's fucked.
That's see you later.
Yeah, that's goodbye. The other thing we should have prefaced at the start, Jones' dog, he had he wrote all his notes on the computer. I said, mate, he said, I've got 5% left. I said, send them to me just in case. He said, nah, we'll be right.
Yeah, battery's gone.
What happened? The battery's dead. So we're going freestyle.
Yeah, we're fucking winning it. That's all
right. One of the other scenarios I talk about is the ozone layer, which is a really interesting story. I actually liked it. But it's basically that they discovered that it was bad. So we've got an ozone layer which is protecting us from bad UV rays, essentially. UV rays causing a lot of cancer and a lot of bad stuff. We had these things called CFCs.
Yeah.
Carbon fluoros, chlorine, something.
Yeah, fancy shit.
So like it was a lot of like aerosol. Anyway, a lot of stuff. It was bad. We were releasing these CFCs into the atmosphere. The chlorine was was reacting with the ozone, and it was that's where, if you've heard of the hole in the ozone layer, and it was over Antarctica because of the winds. It blew all the CFCs and the chlorine down to Antarctica, and we got that hole in the ozone layer. But basically, after like some scientists discovered, they were laughed at initially, but then people realised, hang on, this is not good, this is not good. A whole bunch of world meetings, all the world leaders got together, and over the span of 15 years, they gradually reduced this until they sort of fixed it.
Yeah.
So they use this story to highlight that once we realise what we're doing wrong and we realise how to fix it, and if everyone works together on a global scale, we actually might be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So
once we wake the fuck up, the whole globe can get together around problems. And I don't think it really happened in Paris last year. Unfortunately, there's a lot of like fancy talk, but there's not been real leadership. Maybe Australia a few years ago with the carbon pricing, which had a very negative response.
Yeah,
and then got shut down. But yeah, so that's the kind of stuff we need. We definitely need to capture the externalities in the economy, the cost of the environment and social costs as well.
Yeah.
Which is starting to happen a little bit, but a lot faster would be a bit better, I think.
Yeah. I've got another little thing here that they say, once the population and the economy have overshot the physical limit of Earth, there are only two ways back. So one is involuntary collapse caused by escalating shortages and crises. So that's that overshoot and collapse. And the other one is a controlled reduction of our ecological footprint by deliberate social choice. So that's everyone working together and saying, we need to do something about this. Let's go into overshoot and oscillation instead of overshoot and collapse.
Yeah. Fucking oath, man.
Mate, Mate, you're huge into your sustainability.
Yeah.
So chapter 7 and 8 are about transitioning to a sustainable system.
Yeah.
So what's sustainability? And
it's pretty simple. I don't have the definition in front of me, but I think it's just you're taking away the same rate you're replenishing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty straightforward, isn't it? So basically, hang on, I had a definition here. That today we can meet all of our needs without compromising the future.
Yeah, without fucking the future.
Yeah, and so there's what they say is there's three-way signal. So we're going to get these signals that resources are getting overused, pollution emissions are growing beyond sustainable limits. There's three ways that we react. One is to just deny it, disguise the signals, or just confuse them as something else. And our reactions to those might be completely off. So one might be we realize that there's a lot of pollution and people are having respiratory problems. So we think, okay, rather than just polluting this here, let's just build these really high smokestacks and shoot this smoke up to the top, a couple of 100 meters in the air, and it'll all be good. So that's bad, obviously. Yeah, and they give a whole bunch of stupid things like that. The second way to respond is we can try and alleviate the pressure with like technical or economic fixes. So we might say, okay, how can we use this more efficiently? How can we use this better? How can we maybe reduce the pollution by improving the efficiency of our electrical generation? How can we, nature used to be this sink. How can we maybe put some of the pollutants elsewhere instead of dumping them in the river? Things like that. Or the third and the best one is to realize that, hang on, everyone's doing something wrong here. We need to completely change the structure. Yeah. And that's sort of where they're saying that's where we're at. We need to change the structure of 100%. The whole system.
So and that change, as we briefly mentioned earlier, might take a bit of economic pain for the world and a bit of collapse before hopefully not too much collapse before everything changes, man. So
one thing they stress is they want obviously we want a sustainable system, but sustainable doesn't mean zero growth. Yeah. It just means sustainable growth. It means that we grow at the rate that we're growing our limits. Yeah. So by turning to renewable resources, we can improve the rate at which we're generating energy. We can still grow, but not faster than we're growing our.
And the best part, maybe one of the advantages for growth with sustainability, there's no scarcity of resources. There's infinite scarcity, so there's really infinite growth if you're using stuff sustainably. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. That's pretty wild, man. So should we get what do you reckon, into the tools or?
Yeah, basically some of the broader. So there's some broader things that are like I think for the big dogs, the real decision makers, and then there's things that everyone can do. So I think some of the bigger things is like extending the planning horizon. So at the moment they're saying we're too short-sighted. Improving the signals, speeding up our response time, minimizing the use of non-renewable resources, preventing erosion, and trying to slow the exponential growth on our population's a big one, and like physical capital. Yeah. So there's some of the real broader things that people need to do. Population's a big one, man. Yeah.
So population's huge.
There's too many people.
We get one of the biggest thing an individual can do. This might be a bit more, in my opinion, than the book. Is probably just have one kid.
Yeah. Well, the book says that.
Yeah.
The book says you shouldn't have more than 2 kids.
Cap it at 2.
Cap it at 2.
Yeah. We don't fucking need more people.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's the worst thing we can do.
And that's what they talk about, that the site, like growing an economy, generally third world countries tend to have more kids because they die more, they need more help in like things like farming as opposed to service. So, they might be having 6, 7, 8 kids. But they're saying that just growing those economies isn't going to help the population. because it needs to be growth that affects everybody. And the biggest one is women. So like educating women, and if the women become more financially independent, then they'll start having less kids.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll get into some of the positive shit. So there's been a few revolutions in the past.
Yeah.
So first of all, it was the agricultural revolution.
Yep.
But that in turn created a scarcity in energy with more people in the world and the population boom.
Yeah.
So a new revolution was required, and that's when the industrial revolution was born.
Yeah.
So basically trading trees for coal and for energy. And
Yep.
now there's a new scarcity, and this might require a sustainable revolution.
Yeah. So that's the third one we need, is that sustainability
We've
revolution.
done it in the past. We're a fucking wild, awesome, scary situation in human history, aren't we? Like we've covered the inevitable. There's like technological change coming ahead, big time, like the hardcore reality.
Virtual reality sex.
Yeah, that's
have a listen to the inevitable episode.
Mate, if the world gets too fucked, I'm just gonna switch on my virtual reality.
I just watched it for that.
Just switch it on, mate. It's gonna be like Jennifer Aniston, fucking 6 years, fucking taking off, and the world's fucked. And
I should just for the first time, I was on the plane yesterday. I watched The Matrix for the first time.
Yeah.
That's it, mate. Let's just plug in.
Yeah.
Plug into The Matrix.
Yeah, 100%.
Virtual reality sex. But yeah, so as you said, so we had the agricultural revolution. They say that these revolutions were gradual, spontaneous, largely unconscious. People used to just fucking run around, hunt animals, fucking kill them, and just were nomads basically. And then eventually someone realized, hang on, if I just like stay here, plant some, trees, some berries and veggies and stuff, rather than trying to roam around everywhere, I might just hang out here for a bit. And that was our agricultural revolution. As you said, then there was the industrial. Now we need sustainability revolution. Now, have you got those 11 things from page 266? Because that's some of the things that we can do.
Yeah, okay.
What do you reckon? So there's 11 things that we can do. Buy an energy efficient car.
Yep.
Jump on the Tesla bandwagon.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, have a listen. Number 2 is like recycling your bottles and cans. Number 3, vote knowledgeably in elections. We don't get to vote in the US one, but we'll talk about that at the end. Number 4 is work out your own frugally elegant lifestyle. So that's a big one, in that a lot of religious texts that they say talk about living an adequate lifestyle, not excessive.
Yeah.
And so being, you don't have to go too hard, but just have enough. Don't keep striving for it. Number 5, as you said, have at most 2 children. Number 6, argue for higher prices on fossil fuel energy. So that's what you prefaced just before, in that having higher prices will encourage energy efficiency and stimulate development of renewable energy. Number 7, work with love and partnership. And try and help lift people out of poverty. So it might be just like pick one family and try and help them out of poverty. Number 8, find your own right livelihood. So don't work in a job that you don't like. Do something you enjoy doing. Number 9, care well for one piece of land. Number 10, do whatever you can to oppose the systems that oppress people and abuse the earth. And number 11 might be the most extreme: run for election yourself and try and take over.
Yeah. So awesome, man. So overall, what do you reckon?
Overall, I like it.
Good fucking book.
Good book. I don't know, as I said, I got a little bit bored in the middle, but going over it now, I liked it. So and we touched on the broader theoretical stuff. They spoke a lot about different scenarios and of their model of what changing inputs and sources and sinks and everything, and how that looks. But I preferred this broader sort of overarching stuff.
Definitely. They said at the start of the book, one of the most positive things about the 1970 version is, for those who read it, they had a transition or change in their career path to more one that's focused on sustainability and helping the planet. So that's probably where it had an impact on me the most, is because I wanted to go in that way, but now it's like more like, fuck, there's going to be huge opportunities if you work in the sustainability industry in the future. Oh, that probably will. It looks like that will be where the most scarcity will be in the future. With so people move from non-renewable resources to renewable resources. So if you get your skills in that area in the future, you're going to be fucking laughing.
Yeah.
Financially, you'll be helping the planet and you'll be having a purposeful and awesome career.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
It's one of the
Is it worth a read? You said it was your top 5 books, yeah?
Yeah, I loved it.
Yep.
Just what I learned from it. There's a little bit of fat in the book.
Yeah.
Like I didn't follow a lot of the models and stuff like that. It's a bit boring. The high level shit.
Yeah.
It's like you just realize something's going to happen.
Yes.
Exponential growth. The world's
Limits.
limited. The resources, the sources, limits there. There's limits to the sinks. It's just going to come fucking in our lifetime, and it might come hard. So
yeah, I was a bit scared, man, going over this. It is a bit scary. Hopefully the people in control are looking after us, but I don't think they are they?
Mate, back to the windshield analogy. They're not fucking saying either. They're just
they're just growth.
Mate, put on the accelerator, go through the red light, and there's fucking you have to go off a cliff. So we got to just take the blindfold off, I think.
Take it off. That was intense, man. That was intense. We got through it. But mate, so we've done things like the inevitable, look into the future. We've done cowspiracy, which was a bit out of my range.
Yeah.
This sustainability stuff is probably not. Again, a little bit out of my depth. Let's get back to
happy shit.
Let's get back to something I'm more familiar with. Trump.
Fucking Trump.
Next week is going to be biggie. We're doing Trump. So he had a book in 1987. Yeah. So this is what's that? 30 years ago. Damn.
It's a long time.
He's a pretty impressive dude. I must admit, man. It's gonna.
So there's obviously some shit with Trump, but he's obviously got skills. So that's what we're focusing on next week with his book. It's called The Art of the Deal. He's got fucking skills. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Whatever you think his motive is, he might be a bit of I'll use the word cunt. In some ways, there's no doubt. But pick what you can from him in terms of making deals. And
he's a deal maker.
Yeah, we'll get into that next week.
We'll get him on.
We'll get him.
We'll try.
Mate, what about these authors? We're getting them on?
Jorgen Randers?
I think
you emailed one, didn't you?
Yeah, I think she's dead though.
Oh no.
Shouldn't laugh.
Mate, we won't get on.
But yeah, fuck mate.
But Trump, let's sing.
Sing that shit.
Can we do it?
Stop the growth.
There's growth, but there's limits.
But the world economy relies on this growth.
But there's limits.
Where are the limits?
In the sources and the sinks.
The source? You're saying there's a limit in the source?
Yeah, we could overshoot the limit.
Oh my god. What's the alternative? We can live sustainability, motherfucker.
Sustainability meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to make their own.
It's the only way of not fucking ourselves up.
Physical growth on a finite planet must eventually end, because human beings and the natural world are on collision course.
We must not collide, we must collaborate.
Collaborate and love.
Fucking virtual sex.
And Trump. And continuous growth. Sigmoid. Overshoot oscillation or
Overshoot and collapse.